Baseball is back, and at Team Toyota, savings and selection are back too. With tons of new Toyota SUVs, trucks, and hybrids to choose from, and with our lineup of over 200 certified used Toyotas, you can find the right fit for you and your budget. Plus, our service and collision centers are here to get you back in the game in no time. Visit one of our 3 locations in Princeton, Langhorne, or Glen Mills, or online at teamtoyota.net.
Oh, Canada. Here we go, Corey Seidman. The Phillies head north with a little 3-game trip with the Toronto Blue Jays. This is the Phillies Talk podcast. I don't know if you enjoyed that rendering of Oh, Canada, but here we are, joined by Corey Seidman. I am Spencer McKercher. Core, last time we talked, this team, the Phillies, had a 2.5 game lead over the Mets and then Elise. And now as we sit here on Tuesday morning, before the series in Toronto, they are now 1.5 games back of the Mets, coming off 4 straight losses, only the second time that's happened since 2022 at Citizens Bank Park. Obviously, the sky's falling, everything is terrible, and now they're going to face this Blue Jays team who just won 5 straight.
Yeah, it's only the second time this season the Phillies have kind of gone through a rut. They had that 5-game losing streak at the end of April when they were swept in New York. They responded by going 23-6 over the next 29 games. So, you know, from a Phillies fan's perspective, they're hoping that it's the same sort of response here. But they're taking on a Blue Jays team this week that is starting to hit its stride offensively. Toronto was kind of hovering around 500 for most of the first 2 months of the season, but right around the end of May started putting things together offensively. Blue Jays have scored 39 runs in their last 4 games. They have Bo Bichette, who's hitting for power at the top of the lineup, and the Phillies now will not have Zack Wheeler pitch on his normal day Tuesday. It was supposed to be Wheeler to begin the Toronto series, which would have also put Wheeler in line to start the final game of this road trip this week for the Phillies in Pittsburgh. But the Wheelers are expecting their 4th child, so everything's been shifted up. Christopher Sanchez will instead start Tuesday series opener, followed by Mick Abel, followed by Jesús Luzardo. The fact that the Phillies had an off day Monday allows all those guys to pitch on regular rest, but it was evident over those last 4 games that the Phillies missed Bryce Harper's bat in the lineup. Even when Harper's not the MVP version of Bryce Harper at the plate, his presence changes everything for opposing pitchers, especially when you have to worry about Harper and Schwarber back-to-back. That is a bear for an opposing pitcher, given how selective those 2 guys are, how frequently they can end in a bat with an extra base hit. So Phillies are hoping to get Harper back in the lineup on Tuesday. It will be a week since he was hit on the right elbow if he's able to return on Tuesday. And, they're just hoping that that's kind of like the missing ingredient for their offense. It wasn't just the offense over the weekend against the Brewers. It was also the defense. It was also the bullpen. Certainly not the Phillies. Certainly not the best showing from them against the Brewers.
It was not, and I'm sure that feels good for Rhys Hoskins and the Brewers, who they continue to stay hot. You said it was a bear, and we'll get to Junebarian here shortly, since it is June. The calendar's officially flipped. We're sitting here June 3rd, but dude, yeah, I mean, it was just, there was a lot going on in this past weekend. Obviously, Bryce Harper was missed. We heard from Trey Turner, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto. On all of them, they were all asked how much Bryce Harper is missed when he's not playing these games. And I'm sure Bryce, he said he's in good spirits, but I think we both know that he's been itching to get back on the field and get back in this lineup and help this team kind of turn around this little 4-game skid. I personally am expecting him, hopefully. I mean, I have no insider information here. I'm expecting him to hopefully be in the lineup either today on Tuesday or Wednesday. But yeah, as you mentioned, there's such a difference in this lineup when he's there. Kyle Schwarber's protected. Even, you go down the lineup, a lot more guys are protected. What could we expect from this offense now as we turn the page and get to Toronto? Do you expect them to get back on track? And then obviously we'll get to the starting pitching down the road, because Jesús Luzardo and Zack Wheeler, both part of this 4-game losing streak, both got maybe their worst starts of the season so far. We'll get to that. But do you expect this offense to kind of get things going in Toronto?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Whenever people ask questions like that, it's like, who knows? We're not prognosticate. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Baseball is a funny game. Sometimes offenses go in the tank for a week or 2 or 3. Sometimes they pull right out of it. But late last September, when the Phillies went to Toronto, it was a big offensive series. You'll remember the Kyle Schwarber went crazy. I think in that first game, 3 homers, 6 ribbies, brought the Phillies back. It was probably the wackiest game of their entire 2024 season. So hopefully Schwarber can pick up where he left off there. I mean, he had a good weekend, four doubles, drove in a run in all 3 games against the Brewers, but you need more than just that. Up and down the lineup, like guys are doing their thing. You have Trey Turner, who's still hovering around 300 with a good OBP, but with less power. Nick Castellanos has been consistent for much of this 2 months so far, hovering around 290-ish, but again, less power than we're used to. It'll come. The weather will warm up. The ball will fly out of Citizens Bank Park. Harper's home run total will surge. Castellanos is probably going to finish around 25-ish. The power will come for Turner. We've seen it come in bunches. But you're right. The Mets have leapfrogged back ahead of the Phillies. When the Phillies went into first place, it was during that week in Denver and Sacramento where they won 3 in a row against the Pirates and then 4 in a row against the Rockies and then 2 in a row against the Athletics and, really surged on the back of playing some bad teams while the Mets were facing stiffer competition. The Mets have the Rockies again this week, so, they're probably going to win at least 2 out of 3 there in that series. Phillies, as you said, enter the week 1.5 games behind them, but they can't really focus on the standings at this point. They just got to focus on good baseball. They know that they're going to be right in the mix toward the end of the season. Got some exciting pieces coming back here. I mean, Mick Abel is going to start on Wednesday night. I think a lot of Phillies fans are going to be excited to see that.
Yeah, his first road start too, obviously coming off an exciting home start against the Pirates. I guess that was 2 weeks ago now, 2 Sundays ago. What an exciting time that was. And obviously it's a little different going to pitch on the road, especially in a whole different country. But I'm looking forward to Mick's start. He's still, as soon as he got sent down, he still pitched great down for Lehigh Valley. And his whole story, man, it's been so awesome. Obviously, it's kind of one of those things where every spring I feel like I've been going down there and I've talked to him and just kind of like, hey, man, how you feeling? How you doing? And seeing this development, obviously not as fast as maybe some Phillies fans or Mick expected after being drafted in 2020. But now this is a big time start. We got Christopher Sanchez on Tuesday, obviously Mick on Thursday against Christopher Sanchez on Tuesday, Mick on Wednesday against Jose Barrios too, who has been pitching the ball well.
Yeah, and Abel, I mean, he really, when he was sent back down to AAA by the Phillies, it's not like the performance suffered or the concentration lacked. It's not like he was just moping and waiting to get back to the big leagues. He continued to pitch well in a couple of starts. And if you include that major league debut for Abel, over his last 7 starts, he has a 1.08 ERA, struck out 50 batters in 41 2/3 innings. So the walk total is still a little higher than you'd want. And that might always be the case for Mick Abel, but the difference this year has been that he's allowing less contact than ever. He's allowing weaker contact than ever. So, yeah, he might be still walking a lot of guys, but he's not facing constant traffic on the base paths where it's a walk and then a single, and now you have first and third with no outs. Like, that hasn't happened nearly as much this season for Mick Abel. I am interested to see what he does against the Blue Jays, because that Pirates start, while it did come in the major leagues, the Pirates are like the worst offense in baseball, and they were going through a real rut at that time. That was in the midst of their, I think it was like 25 straight games. The Pirates scored fewer than 4 runs, or 4 or fewer runs, and Mick Abel started in the midst of that. So honestly, a lot of the bats he was facing in that Pirates lineup are similar to the bats he's facing in AAA, other than a guy like Brian Reynolds maybe, or an Andrew McCutchen. But the Blue Jays, you compare them, I mean, they have Bo Bichette, they have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they have George Springer, they have a lot of veteran bats, Alejandro Kirk. So going to be a tougher test for Abel, guys who are probably going to know the book on him and know to try to wait him out, make him come over the plate in a 2-0 count with a heater. But this is going to be at least a couple starts here for Abel, you'd figure, because Aaron Nola threw a bullpen session on Sunday. That was his first intense bullpen session. Next step from there for Nola would be facing hitters in live batting practice. But Rob Thompson did say over the weekend that the normal day for Nola to do that would be Thursday, but Thursday the Phillies have a 3:05 game in Toronto. So the timing of that game may prevent Nola from throwing live BP that day. Phillies might not hit on the field that day. And if that's the case, Friday would seem more realistic. So if you start to kind of count the days here, you figure about 2 more weeks for Nola if he's going to make a rehab start as well, which he will. Figure might only need to be 1 rehab start for Nola. But what that means is that Abel's going to be in the rotation here for a couple more starts. It's a couple more tries for him to prove himself, show that he belongs, show the Phillies and 29 other teams how much value he has, because also might be a trade candidate at some point too, given the surplus the Phillies have in the rotation. I mean, one of the moves the Phillies made because of that surplus is that they're permanently moving Taijuan Walker to the bullpen. This is not going to be Walker's in the bullpen, and if there's another injury, he comes back to the rotation. Rob Thompson said a couple weeks ago that they don't want to continue to move him back and forth. It's not fair to him, that he will permanently go into this role, and if another injury happens in the rotation, Phillies will go pluck somebody else. I don't know if Taijuan Walker is going to be the answer in this bullpen. I mean, he's only made a couple appearances that have looked really good. There was the one in Tampa where he was electric, 7 Ks over 3 scoreless innings for his first save. He faced the Cardinals a few days later, gave up 2 runs over 3 innings. The first 2 innings of that appearance did look good, but Phillies need help in the bullpen in some form, so it can't hurt to have another arm down there in Walker.
It can't. And Taijuan, after the game, after his start, went on Friday, he mentioned, it was kind of tough getting his routine back. Obviously, there's a little more rest days. He threw an extra few bullpens, but he said it kind of, he didn't really know how to really answer the question. It was just kind of like, yeah, it was kind of weird. And he, at the time, didn't really know what his position on this roster was going to be. And you could tell that it was kind of bothering him. And he still pitched decently well on Friday. It wasn't his best outing, but still for Taijuan Walker, if you compare his 2024 to that start this year, I would have taken that start. But yeah, I think it was. I think it was just the time off in between, not really knowing, like, hey, am I going to be in this bullpen? Oh, now I have to make the spot start. I'm sure that messes with your head. And I think now this move permanent to the bullpen, and whether it's 1 or 2 innings, whatever it may be, I think it's going to help him just kind of get his mindset in a better spot than it has been over the last, where it's been flipping flopping the whole time. So like you said, I don't know if it's the full answer. I'm going to go on a limb and say it's not the answer to the bullpen struggles currently. Obviously the Phillies are going to have to make some sort of move down the road, especially if they want to continue to contend here. But I don't know, man. I'm excited to see what he can do. We could see him in a late game situation, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that they're going to make a move in the bullpen. They will, obviously. It might not even just be 1 move. It might be 2 moves. Last summer, for example, the bullpen wasn't even a weakness, and the Phillies added Carlos Estevez and Tanner Banks. So that was 2 arms they added. But that's probably not coming here for 2 months, the better part of 2 months. Trade deadline's the end of July, and it's June 3rd as we sit down to record this. And I think I've said this before on the podcast, but the only way you're getting one of the top available relievers on the market right now is if you totally overpay for them. If you bowl a team over and convince a team that this is a better offer than you're going to get even when there's a bidding war leading up to the deadline. I mean, Pete Fairbanks of the Rays is probably going to get traded. The Orioles are probably going to trade their back-end guys. Ryan Helsley's been a common name, but I mean, the Cardinals are still in the mix, so I don't know if that's definitely going to be a trade, especially because he's a rental, and the Cardinals aren't going to get as much for him as his worth would be in a situation where he had team control. But the Phillies are going to have to figure things out in this bullpen because it's the weakness of the team right now. I know that the defense cost them over the weekend, but the bullpen, you don't have enough reliability right now. You're kind of flipping a coin with the guys that you could rely on last year. Like Matt Strahm has not been the same guy. Orion Kerkering has not been the same guy. Jordan Romano has gotten better since the beginning of the season, but it's still kind of a heart attack situation.
Yeah, it's a hold your breath.
Yeah, like
hold your breath situation.
Loaded the bases in his last outing, got out of it with a called strike 3 that wasn't really a strike. The other part of that is that when you only have like 3 guys that you can totally trust in Romano, Strahm, and Kerkering, they're pitching a ton. They're pitching more than you need them to, because if it's a game where you're winning 3-1 after 6 innings, you're probably using your top 3 guys in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning if the starter doesn't go deeper than 6. And you can't push the starter deeper than 6 every single time, because then you're potentially costing him innings at the end of the season when it matters most. I mean, I look at Jesús Luzardo. Jesús Luzardo in that one outing against the Brewers last weekend, it totally derailed and kind of ruined his season numbers. And not that is the most important factor in all this. The most important factor is getting past that day and making sure you have enough pitching to cover 27 outs. But to go from 2-1-5 to 3-5-8, Luzardo probably stayed in like 5 or 6 batters more than he needed to. I mean, I look back and recreating that inning, the big 4th inning the Brewers had where they scored 8 runs off of Luzardo. Even after Rob Thompson was ejected for a balk call that sent a runner to second base, Luzardo still went walk, single, out, 3-run homer. There were a zillion opportunities to pull him from that game, and it would have just been like a normal bad outing instead of a historically bad outing, right? Luzardo said after the game, he said, that's what they pay us for. They pay us to be able to flush those outings and move on to the next one, because the reality is it was just one outing, as bad as, even though it totally changed his season and could be the difference between him finishing with an ERA below 3 or at 4, that'll be a big start for him on Thursday, just being able to show efficiency in Toronto, for Luzardo to show effectiveness, to go deep into that game, hopefully. Phillies have worked him hard, but yeah, they're going to need to figure out this pitching situation, because the rotation's been really good so far. You know that the offense has enough that this team's going to win like 95-ish games, but a bad bullpen can derail a lot of things. You know, you think back to like that 2020 season, that was the worst case scenario where you had like nobody who could pick up outs. It's not quite that bad for this Phillies team. You know, they still have guys who are probably going to improve as the season goes on, but you can't just rely on that. You need to be more proactive, as Dave Dombrowski always is. So I would expect that, you know, when we're talking on August 1st, 2 months from now, this three-headed monster of relievers you can trust will probably be closer to 5.
I hope so, man. You talk about 2020, just brought nightmares back of Brandon Workman's curveball. Just, oh my gosh. Shout out to Brandon Workman, shout out to the 2020 season. But going back to Luzardo just real fast, I mean, obviously, we were at the ballpark when it was happening. He allowed 3 earned runs in his start in Sacramento in the first inning, allowed 4 earned runs in this first inning on Saturday. And then he settled in Sacramento. This was obviously the completely worst case that could happen. Obviously, I got back here, and our good buddy Ricky Bowe was losing his mind on why he stayed in there for so long. You mentioned, you know, the walk. That's probably when I went and got him. And it was funny, like Rob definitely tried to fire up his team by getting thrown out there. I mean, I thought it was a balk. I don't know about you. I don't think it was necessarily about trying to fire up his team. Maybe there was some of that because the Phillies could have used a spark, but I think it was more so protecting his player because Luzardo was pretty close to getting ejected himself. He wasn't happy with the explanation. Thompson wasn't happy with the explanation when he came out. Like, I don't think that was a fake sort of ejection. I think that was real. I do think, however, that probably all the confusion in that moment affected the rest of that inning. If Rob Thompson doesn't get ejected there, I don't know if Jesus Luzardo stays out for 6 more batters. You know, he might have been pulled a little bit earlier. You might have had a reliever ready earlier. The problem there was that Joe Ross wasn't really hot until toward the end of that stretch of at-bats. And sometimes you do need to kind of just save the bullpen. But I don't know, when you weigh these things against each other, if you had Ross throw 15 more pitches and Luzardo save a run on his ERA, you know, the way these things, I don't know what matters more. Have you seen an ERA jump like that in one start, especially for a guy that we're talking about? We're sitting here. I actually just saw, I had a memory that I think we recorded a pod a year ago today on June 3rd, and we were talking about how Ranger Suarez was like the Cy Young favorite at the time. Jesus Luzardo he wasn't the favorite, but he was in the top 3 of favorites, and now his ERA balloons, 1.4 in one start. 12 earned runs are the most earned runs allowed by a Philly starter since 1947. I think it's only the 4th most since 1913. It's crazy, man. And have you ever seen something like that?
Well, you see it like in the second start of a season because there's the sample size is so small that one run can affect it so much. But no, like for example, Ranger Suarez last year, when he started to go south at the end of June, like his first bad outing was 6 runs in 4 2/3 innings. That boosted Suarez's ERA from 1.83 to 2.27. So like that's a big jump, but it's not 2 runs of a run.
Still sub 2.5.
Luzardo's was, and it's a shame because as you just said, he was in the mix for the Cy Young. He's not in the mix for the Cy Young anymore. Not that it matters if you're in the mix through 12 starts. It doesn't make a difference anyway. But like for him to get back into that conversation, he'd need to be absolutely incredible rest of season to get his numbers back to that place. But that is. The Phillies and Jesus Luzardo are hoping that was just one really bad day. It was kind of more emblematic of what would happen to him earlier in his career more often, that when there was traffic on the base paths, it was more common that he was unable to navigate out of that damage, unable to minimize that damage. He's done an incredible job of that as a Philly. We talked about how in Sacramento, gives up 3 runs in the first inning, gives up a leadoff homer, and then totally settles in. And that has been something Luzardo's done a handful of times this season where he either hasn't had it early or hasn't had it in like innings 2 and 3 and then finds it again in innings 4, 5, and 6 and ends strong. So still, you look at the pitching matchup situation going into the series. You have Sanchez, you have Luzardo. You feel pretty good about those 2 lefties. And then, look, there's also the looming presence of Andrew Painter, who's not going to be up over these next 6 weeks, but All-Star break is coming fast here. It's going to be, July 14 to 17 is the All-Star break this year. The Phillies are not going to call up Andrew Painter before the All-Star break, barring something super unforeseen, but he might be up in that first week after the All-Star break, and we might be seeing a 6-man rotation. We might be seeing Andrew Painter make, 8 to 10 starts or something down the stretch, and that's going to be big for the Phillies to see how quickly he's able to transition this like elite skill set to the major leagues. Is he Paul Skeens right away, or is it more growing pains? And just what does it do to the rotation? Does it mean they go to a 6-man? Do they have to skip a guy a couple times? Because if they have to skip Jesus Luzardo, for example, a couple times, maybe that preserves his innings better for the end of the season. But intriguing time for the Phillies. You have Abel coming up, making another start this week. You have Painter on the horizon, and you already have probably the best rotation in baseball.
I love the debate. I think the debate that I've seen the most on social media over the last, 2-3 weeks, ever since Rob Thompson really started talking about Andrew Painter and when we could expect him. I love the comparison of like how David Price, Clayton Kershaw, when those guys got called up at the beginning of their career, think about the amount of big time situations that they were thrown in the bullpen in the playoffs, right? I saw a lot of people have been talking about that and kind of comparing like this could be Painter. Maybe he comes in a big spot for the bullpen down the stretch in September or in the playoffs. I'm down for whatever. He's impressed me to a point. Obviously, he's still getting back into it. We still haven't seen him throw more than 100 innings in any sort of capacity. Even I think besides high school, I don't even know if he threw 100 innings in high school, but he's impressed me so far with the starts in AAA through 5, but I'm super excited to see what he can bring to a bullpen, to a spot start here and there, especially if it becomes a 6-man rotation. I think it's just been the debate and the weight of Andrew Painter of when this big prospect, obviously once he got hurt, it was kind of like, all right, that kind of stunk. We're going to set him down, kind of shut him down. We were expected maybe in 2024. Now here we are in 2025 where, all right, here we go. We can't wait for the All-Star break or the post All-Star break. And we can hopefully see Andrew Painter. But dude, it gets me like, I got chills thinking about it right now and thinking about what Andrew Painter could do for this team down the stretch.
Yeah, he's not coming out of the bullpen. The Phillies have said that several times. Dombrowski said that. Thompson said that. It doesn't make sense for a guy coming back from Tommy John who started all his life to now be told, okay, figure out a totally different routine and get hot in 5 minutes. Like that's just, they're not going to do that. That's a recipe to re-injure a guy's arm. So that's why Painter's going to come back as a starter. Maybe he might pitch some bullpen innings in the playoffs. Maybe, I don't know. It's a long ways away and we'll see, but that's not what the Phillies want to do with him. They want to break him in as a starter and use him as a starter long-term. I agree. We've seen a lot of big-time, hard-throwing pitchers come in and just let it eat for one inning at the end of playoff games, and that's how they kind of establish themselves. I think Adam Wainwright did that also once upon a time. But this is a unique situation where the guy's coming back from Tommy John surgery. As you referenced, the innings count. So Painter, I would think that 100 is like the top end of what the Phillies would be willing to do this year. He's at 28 1/3 innings. So the whole point of this was that they're not babying him necessarily. They're just trying to keep the bulk of those innings for the major leagues when they matter most. So would you rather Painter be at 50 innings right now and only have 50 potentially to offer in the majors? Or would you rather him be at 28 and potentially have 65 innings to offer in the majors? So how they do that remains to be seen. These problems have a way of working themselves out. Sometimes there's an injury. The 6-man is the easiest solution. The only thing with that is that you're going to have to format it in a way that guys aren't getting too much rest. Like
exactly,
if it's a situation where the Phillies are off on a Thursday and you have a 6-man rotation, that might mean that Zack Wheeler's pitching on 2 extra days of rest, which is too much rest, especially for a guy who doesn't want all that. So that's going to be one of the factors. But it shouldn't help. You'd figure that it would help because it would keep guys fresher. It takes a little pressure off of like Aaron Nola, for example, when he returns. Like the Phillies don't need him to be number 2 starter Aaron Nola. They just need him to be effective the rest of the way. Like if Nola can be a 3.75 ERA pitcher and get you through 6 innings each time because they know they have more coming. They know they have other help in Luzardo, for example, who was on an incredible run before that outing against the Brewers. So, pitching's carry the Phillies. It will continue to carry the Phillies because they have these young guns coming up as well. And those aren't the only young players that are really popping. Justin Crawford continues to hit like 340 at AAA. I know a lot of people are wondering when he's going to be up. Yeah, I mean, he continues to produce. Like it's not like a perfect skill set and approach at the plate because the Phillies want him to hit for more power, hit the ball on the ground a little bit less. But how can you argue with the fact that the guy's hitting 338 this season, Justin Crawford, is hitting 320 overall in his minor league career?
His splits have been incredible.
Yeah.
Against left-handed and right-handed pitchers.
Righties.
Yeah.
The fact that he's a left-handed hitter is not the most ideal thing because you also have Brandon Marsh in that center field picture. But Justin Crawford looks like he's the Philly center fielder of the future as long as he, is able to do this in the majors. Doesn't need to hit 330, but if he hits 290, 285 with good center field defense, that's a valuable player, especially when he's cost controlled and young.
And I think we've seen the Phillies, like the only time we've really seen them call up a top prospect like this is Johan Rojas. And obviously you can argue if it's been effective for Johan, whether it's not. I mean, he's coming off just 7 hits in the month of May. Hopefully Johan kind of finds it again. But people have been clamoring for this, dude, especially after this 4-game losing streak. I mean, you see this kid in AAA just dominating AAA hitting right now, and everyone's calling for it. But the Phillies just aren't that type of team, not that type of organization to rush somebody, especially when you have guys that can do it, like Brandon Marsh and hopefully Johan Rojas down the stretch. I'm either one. I mean, can you imagine the buzz in the city if they bring up Painter and Crawford at the same time? Do you think that could happen, or do you think it's maybe just Andrew Painter and we'll see Justin Crawford in 2026?
I mean, I think we'll see Justin Crawford this year, even if it's in September. He's not on the 40-man roster yet, so you'd have to make a 40-man move, but that could, they could figure that out. The thing with Justin Crawford, I don't think the Phillies are like holding him back or anything like that. It's, he hasn't played a ton of AAA games. He's played 49 games at AAA. So it's not as if this is his second full season at AAA and he's doing this. Like, I think that they just want to get a little more seasoning, make sure he's ready. And what you hear from a lot of teams is they want to call a guy up and let him stay up. Like the last thing a lot of organizations want to do is call up a top prospect and he goes 2 for 25, and then you have to send him back down, and maybe his confidence is affected. And like, for example, what the Diamondbacks just did with Jordan Lawler, who's one of their top prospects, they called him up, they barely played him. I think he went like 4 for 38 or something, and then they sent him back down. And who knows what that does to that kid, but it's not ideal. The ideal thing would have been if he continued to thrive at AAA, or if you called him up and had everyday playing time for him. So if Crawford keeps hitting like this, though, he's going to force the Phillies' hand, because it's not as if the Phillies' own center field picture is perfect itself. It's not like they're getting a ton out of that Marsh-Rojas duo. So I don't think there's any doubt that Crawford's like going to be in the center of this picture moving forward. It's just the question of, does he debut in 2025 or does he debut in 2026? But a lot of excitement for the Phillies, as we've been saying. Otto Kemp is also crushing it at AAA. Another guy who there might be some defensive questions, but his bat has played. And I know that Phillies fans want to see these guys because, Weston Wilson, for example, had a rough weekend. But Weston Wilson still does serve a purpose on a major league team. I know that it's hard to hear something like that after what we just saw, but he is there to hit lefties, which he's done throughout his major league career in a brief second. He does offer defensive versatility. That was not a good day for Wilson in left field. It hurt the Phillies. But you pay attention to all these things when there are like bigger picture issues at play, like when Bryce Harper's out of the lineup, when the offense isn't scoring as much, when the bullpen is shaky, when multiple spots on defense aren't getting it done. So this could be a total turnaround for the Phillies this week in Toronto and Pittsburgh. The Pirates are not good. Blue Jays, that if the Phillies win 2 out of 3 in both these series, they'll come back home feeling good about themselves. They'll probably be right there neck and neck with the Mets as they wait to take on the Mets again. Man, when do they see the Mets again? I guess we're still 3 weeks away, right? In June?
It's June 20th through the 22nd. I believe that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All games on national TV for that one. So should be fun. Hey, let's not harp on, Weston Wilson. I mean, he threw 2 scoreless innings on Saturday. So, hey, that was pretty awesome to see. Real quick, 2 quick things. Did you happen to see, we mentioned Zack Wheeler obviously missing his start. It would have been today. On Tuesday, missing that start because his wife is expecting their 4th child. Did you happen to see that TikTok?
I did. That wasn't the first time either. Wheeler, it's funny because everybody thinks Wheeler's like this stoic guy. He never shows any personality, but he's had a couple TikToks with his wife, Dominique.
It's a good one. We were going to play it, but just, the context of it, not really safe for work, but still really funny. If you haven't seen it, please go to Nikki Wheels on TikTok. His wife, they did a pretty funny TikTok as they're expecting their 4th child. Obviously, our favorite segment, it is officially Junebarian. Did you leave cookies out for Kyle on Saturday night? No,
but the rumor is if you leave them out that he will find them. The Schwarber is the Junebarian. You know that June 4th, 2023 is the 2-year anniversary. But look, the funny thing is that Kyle Schwarber has what he's done in April and May has been the equivalent of what he usually does in June. Like he's been that hot for 8 weeks to start the season here. So if it's another huge June for Kyle Schwarber, the month might end with him being talked about as the potential 2025 NL MVP. I mean, Shohei Ohtani won it last year. He's a DH.
Yeah.
And Schwarber has been like as impactful really as anyone in the NL this year. He's just been so good. I'm not saying he's going to win the MVP. There's a lot of leading the team in home runs or RBIs. I was looking at hits since joining the Phillies. His number 26 home runs, 58 RBIs, a 253 batting average, a 371 OBP in June since 2022. He has 1 triple as well.
One triple in 2023, but
yeah, he's continuing to add dollar signs to that free agent contract, Kyle Schwarber. It's going to be really fascinating to see what that number ends up getting to, because there's some people who think, okay, Schwarber's going to get like a 4-year deal because of his age and his limited versatility and all that stuff. I look at it like this is one of the best power hitters in all of baseball, and there's 29 other teams in addition to the Phillies that are going to have interest in Schwarber because they'd be able to say, okay, maybe we give him a high AAV at a short-term deal. You'd have mid-market teams saying that. Then you're going to have the big market teams like the Dodgers and the Mets and the Yankees. They're all going to want Kyle Schwarber too. Why wouldn't they? As long as they're not tied up at DH. So I could see Schwarber getting $30 million a year or approaching that. I look at the Pete Alonso contract. Pete Alonso contract is somewhat of a template. I think Alonso's getting like $27 to $29 million a year. It's a short-term deal because he couldn't find the years that he wanted in free agency. But Alonso is a very similar player, I think, to Schwarber. So Phillies are going to do all they can to keep him. I do think at the end of the day they're going to keep him. But from Schwarber's perspective, at this point, why does it make any sense to re-sign in season? You're 3 months, 4 months away from free agency. All you need to do is stay healthy in order to set yourself up for a tremendous payday when you have all these teams bidding against each other. He loves being here, probably wants to be here long term, but there's a way to use that to your advantage. And and if he leverages that, it's going to boost the price tag, and the Phillies are going to need to pony up to keep him. But there's certainly nothing the Phillies have seen that makes them think that Kyle Schwarber is worth letting go. He is the straw that stirs the drink for the Phillies. Even when Harper's been healthy this year, it's been like Kyle Schwarber's lineup.
Yep. And obviously we talked about it numerous times, and I feel like it's very well known now that he is the leader of that clubhouse. And I don't think you can afford to lose a leader like that, especially, we talk about leverage. If he's starting to get MVP votes, I'm sure that contract is going to continue to go up. And I expect Kyle Schwarber to get a few MVP votes if he continues on this trend. And let's hopefully, if and when he's ever in Cooperstown, he's wearing a Phillies hat on his shrine, which is a very interesting.
Well, that's an interesting one. I haven't thought about Schwarber. I haven't thought about Schwarber, the Hall of Famer, but if he does this for another like 7 seasons or something, I don't know. So what's he at right now? He just passed 300, right? In terms of,
I think he can get 500.
Yeah, I think he can too. I mean, he plays pretty much. He doesn't miss a ton of games. Like as a Philly, he hasn't missed games in any of these years. So he's at 303 right now. So if he were to average, say, 40 homers a year for the next 4 years, that gets him to
160.
That gets him to 460, like 460-ish. So he will need to play like 5+ more years. But if he maintains this pace, he can get to 500. I've been thinking about the Hall of Fame with relation to Zack Wheeler lately, because it sounds maybe absurd because there are guys who should be in ahead of him, like Johan Santana should be in ahead of Zack Wheeler, for example. But you almost have to change the way you look at a Hall of Fame starting pitcher now, because obviously there's never going to be another 300-game winner. There might never be another 200-game winner. Okay. Yeah. After Scherzer and Verlander retire, that era of pitcher will be totally gone. The era of pitcher where you can throw 250 innings in a season. Like we talk about it as being remarkable when a guy goes 200, when a guy goes 210. Okay. Roy Halladay, Verlander, Scherzer earlier in their careers were going like 240, 250. So you're never going to see a guy again with 200 wins probably. So when you start to evaluate Hall of Fame starting pitchers, it's going to come down to the longevity of your dominance. And Wheeler has been the most dominant pitcher in baseball since 2020. This is now going on a 6th straight season of him being the best pitcher in baseball. So it's how long was your peak? Obviously the numbers. But if Wheeler he wants to retire at the end of this contract. This is the first year of his 3-year extension. If he finishes this year the way he's pitched and has 2 more elite years, I think it's going to be a real conversation because you can't judge pitchers anymore on total wins and total innings and things like that. It's more so about how long was your peak. And Zack Wheeler's peak has been the same length as Chase Utley's peak. And Chase Utley's talked about as, a guy who's probably going to get into the Hall of Fame here in a year or two. So, I've been thinking about that lately, is just how many players in this clubhouse will someday be in Cooperstown. Harper will be. It's just a question of who else.
It's funny to think about Zack like that too. I mean, I think what would really help and kind of solidify that? A championship ring. Yeah, like 110%. You get that championship, and that I think you have a very good case for Zack Wheeler to make the Hall of Fame.
But that's also the other part of it, is that he's been so good in the playoffs too.
Exactly.
His numbers in the playoffs are absurd. It's like Kurt Schilling level. So
yeah, let's hope so, man. That'd be great. And that you just mentioned that pitchers aren't going to. I saw that stat. I think we've talked about it with Roy Halladay on the anniversary of his perfect game, 15-year. Something that he still has the most complete game shutout since 2010, still to this day.
I think it's just complete games. Yeah, he has like more than like most teams since then. It's just a different game. It's just a different. That's why pitchers aren't going to get to 200 wins anymore, because if you're out of the game after 6 and a third innings, you're not in line. You're not the pitcher of record as much as you were in years past. So that'll be a conversation for like 8 years from now, because you have to 5 years after. Hopefully, we're still here. You and I.
We'll remember this June 3rd, 2025. I'll catch you in 2033, and we'll be talking about Zack Wheeler's Hall of Fame candidacy. So, hey, Canada going up there, going up north. You got the Oilers in the Stanley Cup final.
Is that who's in it?
Yeah, baby. Oilers-Panthers rematch of 2024. Our good buddy Jordan Hall wanted me to ask you. So,
something's got to give between those two teams. No love lost.
That's right. Canada. Hopefully their baseball team loses 3 games this week, and hopefully their hockey team can finally win a cup. So, hey, for Corey Seidman, I'm Spencer McKercher. We'll catch you guys hopefully at the end of this week, if not next week, and we'll talk to you guys soon.